The galaxy had been silent for a long time. Not the peaceful kind of silence, but the heavy, tense quiet that comes when fear has settled into every corner. The Vork Dominion ruled most of the known systems, and their shadow reached even those who tried to stay far away. The Vork were not the largest species in the galaxy, but they were the most ruthless. They did not trade or negotiate in good faith. They demanded tribute. Every world under their control had to send a portion of its resources, technology, and even its people to serve the Dominion. Refusal meant destruction. Planets that had once been filled with life and activity now stayed dark at night to avoid attracting unwanted attention. Trade routes that had once been crowded with ships carrying goods were now almost empty. Only smugglers and desperate travelers risked moving between systems. Even they took long, dangerous paths around Vork-controlled space, hoping to avoid patrols. In the Velar sector, near the edge of map space, a small mining colony drifted quietly around a dim star. The colony had been built decades ago by a group of traders looking for rare metals. Now, its inhabitants focus only on survival. They mine enough to meet the Vork's yearly demands, and they did not try to grow beyond that. Any sign of wealth or progress might bring unwanted eyes. The galaxy had learned to hide. But on a quiet rotation, the routine broke. Deep in the mining colony's control station, a young operator named Sela sat in front of a worn console, monitoring long-range scans. It was usually the most boring job in the colony. Nothing new ever appeared on the screen. On most days, the only changes came from asteroids drifting across the sensor range. That day, the readings changed. A faint signal appeared at the edge of the scanner's range. Sela leaned forward, adjusting the focus. The signal was not from a rock or a drifting derelict ship. This was a fleet, several ships traveling together. The readings were strange, unlike any design in the colony's database. The hull signatures, energy output, and even the engine trails were unfamiliar. Sela called her supervisor, an older man named Vero, who had lived through the early years of Vork expansion. He looked at the screen and frowned. Not Vork. He said after a long pause. Not any of the smaller clans either. They are coming from beyond our mapped space. Beyond mapped space was a dangerous place. Ancient stories spoke of empty voids, strange anomalies, and old wrecks from ships that had gone too far and never returned. Few dared to explore that far, especially in recent years. Should I report it to the Vork garrison? Sela asked. Vero shook his head. Not yet. We watch first. If they are raiders, we warn the colony and hide. If they are traitors, they will not find much here worth taking. But something tells me they are neither. Over the next few hours, the unknown fleet moved closer, holding a steady formation. Their course was precise, as if they knew exactly where they were going. It became clear they were heading straight for the Velar sector. Word spread quickly through the colony. People whispered in the narrow corridors and crowded mess halls. Some feared the newcomers were another conquering force, perhaps worse than the Vork. Others, especially the younger colonists who had only known life under the Dominion, felt a spark of curiosity. The colony's old defense satellite came online for the first time in years. It could not stop a real attack, but it could send warnings and buy time for people to hide in the underground shelters. By the time the fleet reached the edge of the system, every miner, engineer, and trader in the colony was waiting for the outcome. The ships emerged from faster-than-light travel with a sudden burst of energy that lit up every scanner in the system. The hulls were made of dark metal with sharp, clean lines. They carried strange markings, not Vork symbols, not the curved letters of the traders, not the jagged runes of the war clans. The shapes looked simple yet bold, as if the designers had no need for ornament. One ship, larger than the rest, moved forward. A signal was sent out in open frequency, and the colony's translation software worked to decode it. The voice that came through was calm and clear. This is Captain Rion of the human vessel Horizon. We come in peace. We seek contact and information. The word human meant nothing to the colonists. It was not in any of their records. Vero sent back a cautious reply. This is Velar Colony. You are in Vork-controlled space. If you are looking for trade, you may want to turn back before they notice you." The reply came without hesitation. "We understand the risks. We are here to learn about the state of this galaxy and to offer friendship if it is welcome." It was such an unusual answer that Vera was silent for a long time. No one offered friendship here, not without expecting something in return. Before more could be said, a Vork patrol entered the system. 3 warships moving quickly, their engines burning bright. They sent a short message to the colony, ordering it to cut all communication with the newcomers. Then they sent a harsher signal to the human fleet, demanding immediate surrender. Captain Rion responded in the same calm tone. "We have no hostile intentions. We will defend ourselves if attacked." The Vork patrol fired warning shots, bolts of energy passing just in front of the horizon. The humans reacted with surprising speed. Small flashes of light shot from their ships, and the Vork weapon systems went dark one by one. No ships were destroyed, but the Vork could not fire back. The colony watched in silence. No one had ever seen the Vork disarm so quickly. The patrol retreated, their damaged systems flickering. When the battle ended, Captain Rion sent one last message to the colony. "We will remain nearby for a short time, if your people wish to talk. We are here." The Vork would certainly hear about this. Their pride would not allow such an event to pass unanswered. But for the first time in many years, the people of Velar Colony had seen someone stand up to them and survive. It was a small moment, but in a galaxy ruled by fear, even a small moment could change everything. And somewhere deep in the minds of the colonists, a thought began to take shape. If these humans could face the Vork and live, perhaps the galaxy did not have to stay silent forever. The Vork patrol limped away from the Velar system, their damaged ships barely holding formation. The colony's scanners tracked them until they vanished into faster-than-light travel. In the control station, Vero stood with his arms crossed, staring at the display. He had lived long enough to know that this was not the end of the matter. The Vork never forgot an insult, and being disarmed in front of a colony they ruled would burn in their pride. Beside him, Sela was still looking at the human fleet's readings. "They did not even aim to destroy the Vork," she said quietly. "They only disabled their weapons." Vero gave a short nod. "That is what makes this dangerous. The Vork will see it as mockery." The colony council gathered that evening in the central hall. It was an old structure, built before the Vork had taken control. With walls made from the local stone and reinforced metal beams, the air was heavy with tension. Everyone knew the Vork would return, but the humans were still in the system, and their presence had brought questions no one could easily answer. Some council members argued to send the humans away immediately. "If they stay, the Vork will blame us for their defiance," said a merchant named Torin. "We have kept our heads down for years. We should not risk everything for strangers." Others, especially the younger members, wanted to learn more. "They spoke of peace," said Sela, who had been allowed to attend as an observer. "And they stood against the Vork without firing a killing shot. Have you ever seen that before?" Arguments rose, voices overlapping, until Vero raised his hand. "The humans came from beyond mapped space. They must have faced dangers of their own to reach us. At the very least, we should hear them out before sending them away." It was decided that a small group would meet with the humans. If the Vork returned during the talks, the colony would claim the meeting had been forced on them. It was a weak defense, but better than nothing. The next morning, the humans sent coordinates for a meeting in orbit around a small moon in the system. A single colony shuttle carried Vero, Sela, and to guards. The journey was silent except for the hum of the engines. Through the viewport, the human fleet grew larger, their dark hulls glinting in the pale light of the system's sun. They were met by a small escort ship, which guided them toward the largest vessel, the Horizon. The docking bay was clean and bright, with an orderly arrangement of craft and equipment. Waiting for them was Captain Rian, a tall man with calm eyes and a firm posture. "Welcome aboard," he said with a slight bow. "I am Captain Rian of the Terran Union. We thank you for agreeing to meet with us." Vero introduced himself and his companions, then wasted no time with small talk. You have already made an enemy of the Vork. Why risk that? You could have passed through this sector without interference. Rion's voice remained steady. We did not come to this galaxy to take sides without reason, but we will not allow ourselves to be threatened without cause. The Vork fired first. We only acted to protect our people. And now the Vork will return in greater numbers, Vero said. Do you understand what they are capable of? Rion gave a small nod. We have learned some of it from intercepted transmissions. What we do not understand is why no one stands against them. Sella spoke before Vero could answer. Because they crush anyone who tries. Entire planets have been burned for resisting. Even the war clans were scattered. We are miners and traders. We cannot fight a power like that. Rion looked at her. For a long moment, I understand fear. But fear can be broken. My people have faced enemies that believed themselves unstoppable. Some of them were stronger than us. Yet they fell because they thought no one would challenge them. The words carried a weight that made the room quiet. Rion then gestured toward a nearby table, where a display showed a map of the surrounding sectors. We want to learn the truth about the Vork's strength, their fleets, their supply lines. If we understand them, we can decide how to act. Vero studied the map. Even if we give you this information, what then? You cannot fight them alone. Perhaps not, Rion admitted, but change must start somewhere. If others see that the Vork can be resisted, they may join. We will not ask anyone to fight for us, but we will fight for what is right. The meeting lasted for hours. The humans asked about trade routes, control planets, and Vork patrol patterns. In return, they offered medicine, repair supplies, and small devices that could improve the colony's mining output. They asked for nothing in exchange except the Council's willingness to keep speaking with them. When Vero and his team returned to the colony, the Council gathered again. There was no agreement. Some still wanted the humans gone before the Vork return. Others saw a rare opportunity. In the end, the Council allowed cautious contact. Supplies from the horizon were accepted, but no open alliance was declared for the next few days. The humans visited the colony in small teams. They walked through the mining tunnels, examined the aging machinery, and spoke with workers in the mess hall. They did not act like conquerors or distant diplomats. They asked questions about life in the colony, about the challenges people faced. Scylla noticed how the workers warmed to them quickly. Even the most cautious miners admitted that the humans seemed different from any species they had met before. There was a confidence in them, but also a strange patience. On the fourth day, the Vork returned. This time it was not a small patrol, but a larger force, 6 warships, bristling with weapons. They ignored the colony entirely and moved straight toward the human fleet. From the control station, Vero and Cell watched as the two forces faced each other in the cold darkness of space. The Vork sent a sharp message demanding that the humans leave the sector immediately, or be destroyed. Captain Rion's response was short. We will not be ordered away. We came to speak, not to submit. The Vork opened fire without warning. Energy bolts flashed across the void, but the humans moved with precision. They weaved between the attacks, their counterstrikes hitting engines and weapon arrays. One Vork ship spun out of formation, its systems offline. Another was forced to retreat when its shields collapsed. The battle lasted only minutes, but it ended with the Vork withdrawing once more, their losses heavier than before. Not a single human ship had been destroyed. When the news spread through the colony, whispers began again, but this time they carried a new tone. People spoke of the humans not as reckless strangers, but as something else, a force that might be able to stand where no one else had dared, and somewhere deep in the galaxy. The story was already beginning to travel. Traders carried it on hidden channels. Smugglers repeated it in quiet corners of spaceports. The tale grew with each telling. The Vork had been challenged twice, and both times they had failed to win. The Vork defeat in the Velar system was not broadcast by official channels, but news as a way of traveling in the galaxy. It moved quietly, carried in the memory chips of traders, in the encrypted messages of smugglers, and in the hushed voices of dockside workers in the asteroid belts near the Eshin border. An old transport captain told the story over a mug of spiced drink. In the shadowed alleys of Rinher Station, a mechanic repeated it to a group of young pilots. At first, no one fully believed it. The Vork did not lose. That was a simple truth everyone knew. Yet the more the stories spread, the more the details matched, it became harder to dismiss as rumor. Across the galaxy, small groups of people began asking questions. Who were these humans? Where had they come from? Why had they stood against the Vork without claiming territory or demanding tribute? In a small, overcrowded asteroid colony named Brindle, a merchant named Laro sat in his cramped office staring at an encoded transmission. It had been routed through 3 different relays to hide its source, but the message was clear. It spoke of a fleet that had faced the Vork and driven them away twice. Laro had no reason to trust strangers, but his people had been paying tribute to the Vork for years. The tribute had grown heavier with each passing cycle, and now his warehouses were nearly empty. One more demand from the Dominion might force the colony into full collapse. The thought of someone strong enough to push back was like a spark in a dark tunnel. He decided to take the risk, working late into the night. Laro sent a message on a frequency used by independent traders. He kept it short, asking only if the humans were willing to speak with him. Then he waited. 3 days later, a reply arrived. It came from a relay station outside Vork space. The sender identified himself as Captain Rion of the Terran Union and offered a meeting in a neutral sector. Laro agreed at once. When the meeting day came, Laro's ship was small and slow compared to the sleek human craft. The horizon loomed ahead, its dark hull reflecting the faint light of the sector's distant sun. As soon as he docked, he was greeted by human officers who escorted him to a briefing room. Captain Rion entered with a calm expression. "You sent word that your people are under heavy tribute," he said. "You want help?" Laro nodded. "We cannot survive another demand. We have nothing left to give them. If we refuse, they will take it out on our people. If we give, our children will starve." Rion studied him for a moment before speaking. "We will not promise what we cannot do, but we can see your colony and understand your situation. If there is a way to help without bringing greater harm, we will find it." Laro was not used to such words. Most who offered help in the galaxy wanted payment or power in return. These humans asked for neither. It was enough to convince him to take them to Brindle. The Horizon traveled to the colony under stealth, avoiding Vork patrols. What the humans found there shocked even them. The mining tunnels were nearly empty. Machines sat broken in the dust. Children worked alongside adults just to meet the tribute quotas. Food stores were thin, and the people looked exhausted. The human engineers began repairing equipment immediately. Portable generators were brought in to power the broken sections of the colony. Medical officers treated injuries and illnesses that had been ignored for years. All of it was done without charge, without promises of loyalty, without demands. The Brindle people could hardly believe it. On the 3rd day of their stay, the Vork arrived. A small inspection craft came to collect the latest tribute. Laro expected the humans to hide or flee, but instead they stood beside the colony leaders as the Vork stepped into the central hall. The inspection officer, a tall figure in dark armor, looked at the humans with cold eyes. "You are not registered in Vork space. Identify yourselves and leave at once." Captain Rion's answer was steady. "We are here at the invitation of this colony. We have no quarrel with you, but we will not leave until our work is complete." The Vork officer's voice turned sharp. "Then your quarrel is with the Dominion." For a moment, it seemed as if weapons would be drawn. But the Vork, seeing the confidence in the human stance, stepped back. They took the small tribute that had been prepared and left with a promise to report this defiance to higher command. When the Vork ship left the system, the people of Brindle gathered in the central hall. Laro stood before them and spoke of what he had seen, strangers from beyond the galaxy, who repaired their machines, healed their sick, and faced the Vork without fear. The applause that followed was hesitant at first, but it grew until the hall shook with it. Meanwhile, aboard the Horizon, The crew sent encrypted reports to their allies and contacts. They shared what they had seen in Brindle, what they had learned about the Vork's methods, and what they believed could be done to resist. The whispers continued to spread. On distant worlds, small resistance cells that had long been silent began to exchange cautious messages. In old mining stations, rebels who had once abandoned their fight began to dust off old weapons. In the hidden corridors of trade hubs, smugglers offered to carry supplies to colonies in need. The Vork noticed the change. Patrol reports spoke of increased communication between independent worlds. Surveillance flagged new encryption patterns. But they could not yet trace the source. In the shadows of the galaxy, the humans kept moving. They traveled from one oppressed world to another, never staying too long in one place. Sometimes they brought food and medicine. Other times they brought knowledge, ways to hide from Vork scanners, ways to repair old engines, ways to pass messages without detection. Everywhere they went, they left behind the same thing. Not weapons, not soldiers, just a sense that the galaxy might not belong to the Vork forever. For the first time in years, hope was moving faster than fear. And though the Vork did not yet know the full truth, they were starting to feel it. The galaxy was changing, and it had started with the arrival of the humans. The humans had moved through more than a dozen systems since the Brindle mission. Each visit was short, careful, and precise. They never left a trail the Vork could follow for long. But everywhere they went, the same thing happened. People talked, people remembered, and people began to think the impossible might be within reach. In a hidden mining station in the outer belt of the Cerny system, a meeting was about to take place. The station was old, its walls scarred from decades of work. The miners had hollowed out the rock around it until the place looked more like a warren than a structured base. Few ships ever came here, and fewer still left. That secrecy was the only reason this gathering could happen at all. Captain Rian stood in the central chamber with two of his officers, Lieutenant Mara and Engineer Holt. They were waiting for leaders from several worlds, all of them invited in secret. Some came alone, slipping through trade routes under false identities. Others arrived with small escorts, pretending to be cargo haulers. Each person who stepped into that chamber had risked their life just to be there. Vero from Velar Colony was the first to greet Rian. "You are either very brave or very foolish to bring us together like this," he said. "Perhaps both." Rian replied with a small smile. "But change will not come from waiting. The Vork are strong, yes, but they are not without weakness. We must learn to strike where they are most vulnerable, around them." The other delegates began to gather. Laura from Brindle, Commander Selen, an ex-officer from a destroyed rebel fleet, Dallin, a trader who had once smuggled weapons for the war clans before they were scattered. Each of them carried their own scars from the Vork's rule. Rian began the meeting by projecting a map of the galaxy. Key Vork systems glowed in red, while independent or semi-free worlds showed in faint blue. The Vork control most of the main trade routes, he explained. They rely on heavy tribute from resource-rich planets to keep their fleets supplied. Their weakness is not in their firepower, but in their supply lines. If those are disrupted, their reach will weaken. The room was silent. Everyone knew this in theory, but to act on it had always meant destruction. Holt stepped forward. "We are not suggesting massive battles. We are talking about small, precise strikes. Remove a relay station here. Disable a supply convoy there. Enough to force the Vork to pull back their fleets for defense. That will give more worlds room to breathe." Selen shook her head. "It will also bring their wrath faster than ever." Mara's voice was steady. "Yes, which is why the Vork must not know where the strikes are coming from. Small groups, moving constantly, never hitting the same place twice." The discussion grew heated. Some argued that it was still too dangerous. Others saw a chance worth taking. In the end, it was Vero who stood and addressed them all. "The Vork have been feared for too long. We speak of survival as if it is enough, but we are only waiting for the day they decide to take everything. The humans have faced them and lived. If they believe this can work, I say we try." It was agreed. The resistance would begin in secret, small enough to be mistaken for random accidents or pirate raids. The first mission was set within days. A Vork supply convoy was scheduled to pass through the empty region between the Varel and Anoth sectors. It carried refined metals from 3 tribute worlds, enough to build and maintain several warships under the humans' guidance. A small team was assembled. Laro used his trading contacts to secure an old freighter, its cargo hold hidden beneath false compartments. Selin provided to ex-military pilots and a pair of light attack craft. The humans supplied targeting data and a device that could disrupt Vork sensor arrays for several minutes. The ambush took place in the deep void, far from any patrol station. As the Vork convoy emerged from faster-than-light travel, the freighter broadcast a distress signal, pretending to be a disabled mining ship. When the Vork slowed to investigate, the attack craft swept in from the darkness, disabling engines and communications before the guards could react. Holt's disruption device worked perfectly, leaving the Vork sensors blind within minutes. The convoy's cargo modules were detached and sent drifting toward a hidden storage site. No one was killed, and the resistance ships vanished into faster-than-light travel before reinforcements could arrive. By the time the Vork reached the site, all they found were empty cargo pods and a few fragments of hull plating. The strike was small in scale, but its effect was felt across the sector. The Vork were forced to divert ships to guard future convoys, leaving some patrol routes unguarded for the first time in years. Independent traders quickly began using those gaps to move goods more freely, spreading the word that someone was striking at the Dominion. In the weeks that followed, similar missions took place. A communications relay in the Draven system went dark for days. A repair station near Vork space was raided for supplies, but the attackers left behind medicine and food for the local population, even on tribute worlds. Small acts of defiance began to surface. Each success strengthened the belief that the Vork were not untouchable. Each mission drew new allies into the resistance, but it also drew the attention of the Dominion. In the Vork High Command Chamber, reports from across the galaxy were laid out before the ruling council. The incidents were too frequent to be dismissed as coincidence. Someone was coordinating them. The Vork leader, Lord Kareth, stood before the council table. His eyes were cold and his voice sharp. This is no scattered rebellion. This is organized. Someone is teaching these worlds how to fight without being seen. Find them, hunt them, and when you do, make an example so strong that no one will dare rise again. Across the galaxy, the humans knew the Vork would soon focus all their power on finding them. But Rian also knew something else. The harder the Vork hunted, the more their attention would be pulled from the worlds they oppressed. That would give the resistance more time to grow. In the hidden mining station where it had begun, the leaders gathered again. This time there was no argument over whether to continue. The spark had been lit, and it was spreading faster than they had dared hope. Rian looked at each of them in turn. We cannot promise victory, but we can promise that the Vork will no longer rule without challenge. If we keep moving, if we keep striking, the galaxy will remember what freedom feels like outside. In the cold emptiness of space, ships prepared to launch on their next missions. Some would carry food, some would carry weapons. All of them carried the same message. The galaxy would no longer live in silence. The resistance had begun. The alien warships spread across the dark horizon like a curtain of metal. Their shapes were jagged and unnatural, built for one purpose only: destruction. The inhabitants of the Allied fleet felt the weight of hopelessness press against their hearts. The enemy had grown too strong, their weapons too advanced, their tactics too precise. But among the command centers and war rooms, one group stood apart. The humans. Commander Rian walked into the central strategy hall of the Alliance ship Celestial Hope. He wore a simple black uniform, without the heavy armor favored by other species. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with focus. We have been reacting to the enemy for too long, he said. It is time to make them react to us. The room fell silent. Captain Vereen of the Zorth Alliance folded his scaled arms. You speak boldly, human. But do you not see their numbers? They will overwhelm us. Rian stepped to the holographic table, tapping a few commands. the enemy fleet appeared in glowing red points of light, a wave across the galaxy. Yes, they have numbers, Rian agreed, but they also have arrogance. They believe they cannot be beaten. That makes them predictable. Lena, the human engineer, stood beside him, and predictable means exploitable. A murmur moved through the room. Some of the alien leaders leaned forward. They had seen the humans do strange things before, reckless, unexpected moves that somehow worked. Rian pointed to a section of the map. Here, Sector 9. They store fuel for their forward fleet there. Without it, their ships cannot travel far. The supply depots are poorly defended because they think we cannot reach them. That is where we strike. General Vereen shook his head. That sector is deep inside their space. We will lose too many ships before we even reach it. Rian smiled faintly. We are not taking the fleet. We are sending a small strike team. Humans excel at slipping through unnoticed, while they focus on crushing our main fleet. We will cut their heart. It was madness to most in the room. But slowly, one by one, the leaders began to see the shape of the plan. A direct assault would be suicide, but a surgical strike, one that destroyed the enemy's lifeline, could give them a chance. The next days were filled with preparation. Human pilots worked alongside alien navigators, studying every possible route. Lena modified a stealth ship, coating it with a blend of human and alien technology. It would be invisible to most sensors for short bursts of time. Those bursts would have to be used carefully. During the nights, the team gathered in the hangar. Talking quietly over small meals, Rian told stories from Earth's history. How small forces had turned the tide of wars. How courage and timing mattered more than numbers. The aliens listened, some in disbelief, others with growing hope. On the eve of the mission, the celestial hope floated in the shadows of a dead moon. The stars beyond seemed cold and distant. Rian stood before his team, for humans, to Zorth scouts, and a Pharaon engineer named Tulo. This mission may decide the fate of the galaxy, Rian said. If we succeed, the enemy will stumble, and the Alliance will have a chance to strike. If we fail, there may not be another chance, but I trust each of you. You are here because you are the best. Tulo's long ears twitched nervously. And if we do succeed, human commander, what then? Rian met his gaze. Then we take back everything they have stolen. The ship launched under silent engines. Lena monitored the stealth field while Zorth scouts scanned for patrols. They moved like a shadow through enemy lines, drifting past massive warships that could have destroyed them in seconds. Inside the stealth ship, every sound felt loud. Every flicker of the console light seemed dangerous, yet the team pressed on, hearts steady. Finally, the target appeared, a cluster of enormous fuel stations orbiting a barren planet. Great tanks of glowing energy pulsed with light. Supply ships moved in and out like insects around a hive. This is it, Lena whispered. Rian studied the scanners. Patrol patterns are predictable. We wait for the gap, then move in. The minutes dragged. A gap appeared. The stealth ship slid forward, coasting between two fuel stations. The team deployed small charges on the tanks, each one designed to ignite the volatile fuel. The moment the last charge was placed, alarms screamed across the station network. They had been spotted. Go, Rian ordered. The ship shot away, the stealth field flickering as enemy fighters closed in. Lena pushed the engines beyond their limits. The stars blurred. Behind them, light exploded. The shockwave tore through the enemy's supply depots, a chain of fire across the black sky. Fuel reserves worth months of war vanished in an instant. Cheers erupted in the ship's cabin. The Zorth scouts clapped their scaled hands together. Tulo let out a trembling laugh, but Rian did not smile yet. We are not safe until we're home. Enemy ships were in pursuit, their weapons flashing. The stealth field would not last long. The crew worked together, human instinct blending with alien skill, dodging asteroid fields and slipping through gravity wells. When the celestial hope finally appeared on their scanners, relief swept through the cabin. They had done it, back in the strategy hall. The news spread like fire. The enemy fleet was stranded without fuel. Supply lines were broken. For the first time in years, the galaxy saw a real chance to fight back. The alien leaders looked at the humans with something new in their eyes. Respect mixed with a little fear. Rian stood quietly, watching the enemy's retreat begin on the holographic map. He knew this was not the end of the war, but it was the first step toward victory. The galaxy had stopped cowering, and it was because humans had arrived. After the successful strike on the Vork fuel depots, the mood among the Alliance was different. The spark of hope that the humans had ignited now grew into a flame across many star systems. People who had lived in fear now dared to dream of freedom, but a single victory was not enough to truly change the galaxy. The Alliance had to become stronger and more united. Captain Rian and his crew returned to the Celestial Hope to find representatives from many worlds gathered there. Some had come as allies, others out of curiosity, and some just hoping to find a way to survive. The meeting room was crowded and noisy, filled with species of all shapes and sizes. Each carried stories of loss and courage under the Vork yoke. Rian stepped forward to speak. We have shown that the Vork can be challenged, but they are still powerful. We need more than brave pilots and small attacks. We need a united front. He looked around the room. That means sharing knowledge, resources, and working together as one. The Zorth leader, Captain Vreen, nodded slowly. It is difficult for our peoples to trust each other after centuries of war and suspicion. But if we are to survive, we must. The humans began organizing workshops and training sessions for representatives from different planets. Engineers from Earth taught others how to repair and improve old ships. Scientists shared their knowledge of advanced technology. Pilots learned new tactics to avoid Vork sensors and ambush patrols. The Alliance was no longer a group of isolated fighters, but a growing force with a shared goal. Meanwhile, trade routes once controlled tightly by the Vork began to open. Merchant ships carried vital supplies and messages between resistance groups. Smugglers who once only cared about profit now helped carry medicine and food to starving colonies. Old rivals found reasons to cooperate, setting aside their differences for a greater cause. In one quiet meeting room, Rian sat with Laro and Commander Selen. We must plan for the future, Rian said. The Vork will not let this continue. Soon, they will send their main fleets to crush us. We must be ready, Laro frowned. Our people still fear the war. Many would rather hide and survive. Fighting may cost more than we can afford, Selen added. We have to protect what we have gained. The Vork will not hesitate to strike at our homes and families, Rian agreed. That is why we must be strong, and why we must fight together. Over the next weeks, the Alliance worked tirelessly. To build defenses, stations and key systems were repaired and armed. New ships were constructed from recycled parts. Volunteers from many worlds joined the cause, some leaving behind quiet lives for uncertain futures. Even those who once doubted the humans began to see their leadership as a beacon. Rian's calm confidence inspired hope where there had been none. The humans' willingness to share technology without demanding control made many question old fears. But as the Alliance grew stronger, the Vork High Command watched closely. Lord Kareth, furious at the loss of the fuel depots, ordered his fleets to regroup for a massive assault. This time, they would not underestimate the humans or their allies. The day of the Vork attack came quickly, the skies above the Alliances. Key systems darkened with warships. The galaxy held its breath. In the command center of the Celestial Hope, Rian and his officers prepared for battle. Screens showed the incoming fleets, larger and more numerous than ever. But the Alliance was ready. They had trained, planned, and united. Rian stood before his team. Remember, this fight is not just for us. It is for every world that wants to live free. Stand together, fight smart, and do not give up. The battle that followed was fierce and loud. Ships darted through space, firing beams and missiles. Explosions lit the darkness like fireworks. The Alliance fought with everything they had, using new tactics learned from their shared knowledge. The humans led daring maneuvers, drawing enemy ships into traps. The Zorth fighters used their speed to outflank the Vork. Engineers worked quickly to repair damage and keep shields up. Though outnumbered, the Alliance held firm. The Vork fleet was pushed back, their advance slowed. After hours of fighting, the Vork commanders sent a message of retreat. It was the first time in decades that the Dominion had withdrawn from a major battle. Cheers and relief swept through the Alliance fleet. Victory was not complete, but it was real. As the ships regrouped, Rian looked out at the stars. The fight was far from over, but the United Front had proven it could stand against the greatest threat the galaxy had known. The galaxy was no longer silent. It was alive with hope and the promise of freedom. And it was because humans had arrived. The galaxy waited on the edge of silence. The Alliance fleet gathered near the edge of Vork space. A shining mass of ships from many worlds, for the first time. They would face the Dominion in a battle that could decide the fate of all free beings. Captain Rion stood on the bridge of the Celestial Hope, looking out at the dark stretch ahead. His heart beat steady but firm round him. The crew moved with calm purpose. Months of training and preparation had brought them here. Enemy fleet detected. The sensor officer announced on the main screen. A vast Vork armada appeared like a wave of black steel and red light. Their weapons glowed ominously. The silence of space was about to be broken. Rian spoke to the fleet through the comm channels. Today we fight for every world the Vork have tried to break. Stand strong. Fight smart. Trust in each other. The fleet responded with a chorus of readiness. Signals, ships formed battle lines. Fighters launched into the void. The first clash was thunderous. Energy beams flashed across space. Missiles streaked toward targets. Explosions bloomed in the darkness, scattering debris. Despite their skill and courage, the Alliance was pushed back. The Vork were ruthless and relentless. Ships were lost, lives ended. Yet the Alliance held. In the middle of battle, Rian made a bold choice. He led a squadron of human pilots on a daring raid toward the Vork command ship. Their goal was to disrupt the enemy's leadership and communications. Flying through heavy fire, the human squadron weaved between enemy fighters. They reached the command ship's shield and struck with precision missiles and boarding. Teams inside the enemy ship, fierce fighting broke out. Human and alien warriors battled through corridors. Rian himself led the charge, knowing that success here could turn the tide. Finally, the Vork command center fell silent. Communications jammed. The armada grew confused, without clear orders. Their attack faltered. The Alliance pressed the advantage. The combined fleet pushed forward, cutting through enemy lines. Ships that had once fled now returned to fight. On the bridge of the Celestial Hope, Rian watched as the Vork fleet began to retreat. Hope surged through the Alliance. When the battle ended, survivors gathered to honor the lost. The cost had been high, but the price of freedom was never small. The victory was more than just a battle won. It was a signal to the galaxy. The Vork were no longer invincible. They could be challenged and defeated. In the days after the battle, planets once ruled by fear began to rise. Trade routes reopened. Refugees returned home. Resistance cells grew into new governments. Captain Rian and his crew traveled from system to system, helping rebuild and unite. They worked not as conquerors, but as friends and partners. One evening, on a quiet world bathed in orange sunlight, Rian stood with Sella from Velar and Lara from Brynhol. The galaxy is free again, Sella said softly, because of what you and your people did. Rian smiled. The humans only showed the way. The galaxy found its own strength. Lara nodded. And now, the future belongs to all who dare to believe. As stars shone brightly overhead, the Alliance celebrated the dawn of a new era, a time when no one will live in fear and all would have a chance to grow. The galaxy had cowered for too long. Now, it stood tall, because humans had arrived.